So there's no debating here. Dumbbells are absolutely going to help you to build bigger shoulders. But if you really want to see some gains from time to time at least, you're going to have to put at least one of those dumbbells down. What's up guys, it's Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. We continue our series today. I'm going to show you how to build the perfect shoulders with just dumbbells.
Oh man. Is that my cue? All right, so perfect shoulders. Wait, you're going to have to move out of the way because you're not going to fit in here. Oh, look at these. Oh my God.
Perfect, Jesse. Listen, maybe improved, perfect, no.
Are you sure? Look at that.
Okay.
Profile.
From any angle, honestly. From any angle. Listen, guys, obviously perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right? It's relative. However, even if you get close to perfect, you're going to look really damn good. And what I'm going to show you here today is 8 things that you can do with just dumbbells. As a matter of fact, dumbbells enable you to do this more than anything else in the gym. So with that said, let's start breaking them down one by one. So look, if you want to build big shoulders, you got to make sure you can actually train your shoulders. And it's important that we warm the shoulders up before we even do that, because we know that it's the most vulnerable joint in the body to injury, given that it has some of the most mobility of any joint in the body. So we start right here at the light side of the dumbbell rack with a light dumbbell to do this little warm-up. It's a simple dumbbell halo that, again, is perfectly done here with a dumbbell because it's very convenient. You go around your head both clockwise and counterclockwise, with the end goal being to work on warming up the rotational aspect of your shoulder. External rotation and internal rotation, something that is very much ignored by most people, which sets them up for injury when they attack their shoulder workouts. Secondly, you want to come across your body with this dumbbell sword raise. And here again, we're working on getting some of that external rotation, but also transitioning to getting your arm across your body, which, as you'll see here in exercise 3, is another very important requirement of healthy shoulders. And that's what this right here with the dumbbell cauldron, where we're working on bringing those shoulders really far across our body as far as we can by making these big sweeping circles, or cauldrons as the exercise is called. The bottom line here, guys, is warming up your shoulders is a requirement for making the gains that you're seeking here. The dumbbell makes it really, really easy to do. All right, so now that you're all warmed up, the next thing we're going to do is actually start building those shoulders up. And for God's sake, guys, do me a favor. Start training your front delts. Look, I've heard it before, you don't have to train your front delts as long as you're bench pressing. Well, you don't have to train your front delts as long as you're bench pressing if you're not looking for perfect shoulders. If you want perfectly developed shoulders, you're going to have to start to include some additional front delt work with some direct exercises. We're not talking complicated here, guys. Dumbbell press outs will work incredibly well here. Dumbbell front raises, a classic front delt builder. The fact is we can apply some focused tension to the front delts and get more hypertrophy. And again, when the goal is building the perfect shoulders, we're not looking for just good enough. We're looking for the best. Which brings us to another important point here. If you want to explore the maximum capacity of growth in your shoulders, figure out a way to get more stretch and more range of motion like this. This is the leaning side lateral raise. You can see that by simply just changing the orientation of my body, that dumbbell is actually crossing midline and applying a greater stretch to the mid delt before I go into every single repetition. I get the benefit of the stretch reflex for better growth. The second exercise we can do can target the front delts in much the same way, and it's just an incline front dumbbell raise. So instead of always doing them standing up, just sit down on this slight incline, and you'll see that your shoulders will naturally fall back behind your body, placing again that slight stretch on the front delt that leads right into every repetition, each one a more powerful contraction because it takes advantage of that stretch reflex once again. Tip number 4, if you want to build those big perfect shoulders, is to make sure that you're not limiting the heavy stuff to just the overhead pressing exercises. That would be the same thing as if you just did a heavy close grip bench press when you're trying to build your triceps and you went light on every other exercise you did. Dips, skull crushers, or maybe even tricep pushdowns. There's a bigger capacity to grow here if you extend those heavy exercise options in your arsenal. So what I'm suggesting is you increase the weight on all of the raises that you do. Front, side, and rear raises. Let's talk about the front first. This exercise is just a heavier than usual front dumbbell raise. Again, what's actually interesting here is it's not necessarily what you're doing on the way up, but what you're doing on the way down that sparks the muscle growth. Because we know that a forced heavy eccentric is going to be one of the 3 main drivers of muscle growth, and it's one that you don't want to ignore when you're trying to build perfect shoulders. Likewise, we can pick up a heavier than usual dumbbell here and do a lateral raise the same way. We call this a cheat lateral. Again, even if I have to utilize a little bit of that momentum to muscle it up to the top, the goal is trying to slow the descent of the dumbbell down, control that eccentric, and provide that impetus for growth. And we don't limit it to just those 2 heads of the delts, guys, because we can attack the rear delts in very much the same way. As a matter of fact, we know one of the best ways to build the rear delts is to overload extension of the shoulder, because a simple seated cable row is actually one of the greatest ways to build your rear delts, and is typically done with heavy loads. But if I wanted to go and stick strictly to dumbbells here like we are in this video, I have two other options here. I can simply sit at the end of a bench and do this little bit of an abbreviated or scarecrow row where I'm just bringing my elbows up to my sides, very short range of motion, and I can feel that because, again, these muscles don't typically use heavier weights. Or I could do the rear delt row, which is one of my favorite ways to train the rear delts heavier, by simply leaning up against a rack, pulling that arm back behind the body with a little bit of a twist of the shoulder into external rotation, which will absolutely light up your delts. But the fact of the matter is, guys, none of these have to be done with light weights, and the additional weight here is enough to spark the growth that is you're seeking. Okay, now having just said that, tip number 5 is actually to work your way down to this end of the rack and start using those light dumbbells too, particularly for those raises. Look, it's important to overload the eccentric portion of the rep, especially on those delts that don't typically get that eccentric overload. But just as important is to make sure that when you're trying to build a muscle, that you're training that muscle and not relying on momentum exclusively to build the muscle up. So what I'm suggesting is, on a front raise, sometimes you want to grab those light dumbbells, really light dumbbells, and go really slow. Eliminate all momentum. Initiate every single inch of a contraction from that dumbbell from your side to shoulder level by and with the front delt only. And of course, the lateral raise that you were doing standing before can be taken down to the floor for a much different effect. With the lighter dumbbells, you're performing only that upper 75% of the range of motion, which in this case is going to keep the focus and the tension directly on that middle delt. There's no reprieve of the dumbbell down at your side in this case. You keep that focus and tension on from the very beginning of every rep to the very end of the last rep. And finally, the rear delts, guys. The W raise done with very light dumbbells is one of my favorite ways to hit this muscle group. The key here is try to form the W with your arms to ensure the rotation of the shoulder and, more importantly, the extension required to hit that rear delt with that really laser-focused effort. Guys, going light is going to be a requirement. There's no choice between heavy and light. Both of them are going to be needed. Tip number 6, you guys know how much I love the face pull, but we don't have cables or a band, and you do have dumbbells. We have the Urlacher. This is there a fly in here?
Oh, don't mind me.
The Urlacher is your face pull equivalent when you have dumbbells and dumbbells only, and you're not sacrificing very much in the process. Guys, we know that the face pull is one of the best ways to build up the entire posterior chain, particularly those rear delts and the upper back musculature. Well, guys, you can do this with the Urlacher by simply sitting with a pair of dumbbells at the end of a bench. And you'll notice that the mechanics of the movement are very similar. They start with that straight arm out in front of your body, and they pull up nice and close to your body, maybe a little bit more of a bicep hammer curl activation in this Urlacher. But when we get to the top, the elbows are staying nice and tight, tucked to the body, hands facing back just like they do on that face pull, and we get the activation of the same muscles. Face pulls, Urlachers, you're never going to get away from it if you're training with me. So by now it's apparent that you could definitely build your shoulders up by using dumbbells only. The fact is, if you really want to build them up, at some point you're going to want to at least put one of them down. Let me explain what I mean. If you were to press a pair of dumbbells up overhead, relatively heavy, you're going to be limited by how much your core can stabilize in the two dumbbells going up over your head at one time. Let's say you had a pair of 50s. Pushing 100 pounds overhead is always going to be more challenging on your core stability than pushing 50 pounds at one time. And what that means is, if you want to increase the weight that you can press overhead, if you simply put one of them down on the ground, you're going to be able to do that to the tune of 10 to 15 or even 20% more weight in that single hand. And what happens is, if you train that over and over again, you will actually build up the strength unilaterally. Then when you bring them back together again in that bilateral press, you'll have more pressing strength overall. We know as we get stronger, the gains will come more easily. Guys, make sure you're not always pressing overhead 2 arms at a time. Mix in that 1 arm at a time for the best and most perfect shoulders that you can build. And speaking of pressing, guys, make sure that you're using your dumbbells to your advantage when you are pressing with them, because they give you one of the most distinctive advantages that dumbbells have overhead pressing that barbells do not, and that is the quick switch between weights and the opportunity to do that seamlessly as a drop set. Look, pressing with a barbell is great, but when we're trying to utilize drop sets with barbells, that precious time lost switching plates on and off can be made up easily by using the dumbbells. As a matter of fact, optimally by using the dumbbells. We simply perform a set to failure, put the dumbbells back, and as quick as it takes us to reach for the next ones, we can get right back up into that next set. When we're looking to train to and through failure, to really tap into those muscle fibers and create the overload needed for growth, dumbbells give us an opportunity that barbells just make a lot more difficult. So there you have it, guys. If you're trying to build perfect shoulders, there's 8 things you're going to want to do, and you just need dumbbells. What is wrong with you?
I got a stiff neck.
From what?
From that tackle.
What tackle?
Just go on. Just go on.
Guys, listen, perfect shoulders, again, in the eye of the beholder, but with these 8 tips, you can get there yourself. If you're looking for programs that break it down step by step, guys, all of our plans will show you how to build the perfect body, all available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. In the meantime, if you found the video helpful, leave your comments and thumbs up below. Let me know what you want me to cover. I'll do my best to do that for you. If you haven't already done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn your notifications so you never miss a new video when we put one out. All right, guys, see you soon.
You know, Mickey and Walt put on some weight, it looks like.